On the evening of September 7th, 1940, nearly 350 German bombers descended on London's East End. 430 people were dead before dawn. It was only the first night. For 57 consecutive nights, the bombing would not stop. More than 43,000 civilians killed, 2 million homes destroyed. History remembers it as Britain's finest hour. What it looked like from the ground was something else entirely. At 4 p.m. on September 7th, the daylight sky over the Thames estuary darkened. A massive wave of German bombers arrived under the protection of 600 fighter escorts, turning the working-class neighborhoods of Poplar, Bow, and Rotherhithe into a wall of fire. This was Black Saturday. Within hours, high-explosive bombs ripped through timber yards, crowded tenements, and factories, leaving 1,600 people wounded and 430 dead. For the dock workers and families of the East End, ordinary urban life vanished in a single afternoon. The shock of the carnage shattered any remaining illusion of safety, instantly shifting the capital's mood from tense preparation to raw, wartime survival. The sirens that sounded on September 7th did not fall silent. For 57 consecutive nights, German bombers returned to the skies over London. Reprieve was non-existent. What began as a sudden catastrophe quickly hardened into a permanent condition. Whole households learned to live in a state of constant vigilance, where the setting sun brought the predictable scream of engines and the tremor of detonating high explosives. This nightly repetition replaced the initial shock of war with a grinding psychological strain. Across Great Britain, the wider campaign eventually claimed the lives of more than 43,000 civilians and destroyed roughly 2 million homes. But in the autumn of 1940, the immediate cost of survival was measured in hours of sleep. Lost, nerves frayed, and the daily hazard of stepping out into streets of shattered glass. Survival became a continuous test of endurance. Londoners woke up morning after morning to find their neighborhoods burning, only to prepare to face the darkness all over again. At dawn, survival meant stepping out of garden shelters to see if a home still stood. For thousands of Londoners, the morning routine began by sweeping mounds of shattered glass from the pavement before heading to work. Commuters walked past massive craters in the tarmac, detouring around burning gas mains and twisted iron. At the office, clerks and typists dusted plaster soot from their desks. Even with holes blown through the roof and rain dripping onto paperwork, businesses remained open. Telephones were dead and water mains ruptured, but employees wore overcoats indoors and carried on. This daily scramble to preserve a normal routine was not a grand gesture of defiance, but a practical necessity. Ordinary habits became the only buffer against complete collapse, keeping the city functioning one daylight hour at a time. When night fell, Londoners sought safety wherever they could find it, even if it meant descending beneath the pavement. Every evening, more than 150,000 people carried bedding, gas masks, and small bundles of food down the escalators of the London Underground. The authorities had initially banned civilians from using the stations as overnight refuges, fearing it would disrupt trains and troop movements. But the public simply ignored the orders, buying cheap tickets just to gain access to the platforms and refusing to leave. Faced with thousands of families camping on the concrete, the government reversed its policy, letting the stations become official shelters. The platforms transformed into subterranean neighborhoods. Families laid mattresses edge to edge right up to the tracks, where children tried to sleep as the warm, metallic air of passing trains rushed over them. To make the long hours of confinement bearable, people organized spontaneous routines. They sang popular songs, shared flasks of tea, and even hung decorations for Christmas. One young survivor recalled clutching a small tin of biscuits, listening to older children sing lullabies to calm the toddlers as the station lights flickered. This improvised community life was born of necessity, turning crowded, drafty tunnels into places of collective endurance. Where the sound of bombs above was drowned out by the murmur of human voices. Above the subterranean safety of the stations, a different hazard waited on the surface. On September 1st, 1939, regulations plunged Great Britain into a total mandatory blackout. Every street lamp, shop window, and household light was extinguished. In this absolute darkness, the familiar city became a hostile maze. Pedestrians found their way by touch, feeling for curbs with their feet, while wardens and police patrolled the blind streets. Without light, even a short walk was lethal. In 1940 alone, accidents during the blackout claimed 9,169 lives. While some families faced the bombs together, others survived through absolute separation. Under Operation Pied Piper, the state relocated nearly 3 million children from urban targets to rural foster homes. On crowded train platforms, school-aged children boarded transport carrying only a small suitcase, a cardboard gas mask, and an identification label pinned to their coats. One young evacuee later recalled the quiet terror of that journey, writing home to describe the strange silence of a countryside cottage where the night held no sirens, only the unfamiliar rustling of trees. For these children, physical safety was bought at the cost of emotional exile. They lived with strangers for years, their connection to family reduced to infrequent letters, and fading memories of parents left behind in the burning streets. On November 14, 1940, the destruction expanded far beyond the capital. That night, nearly 500 German bombers targeted the industrial city of Coventry, dropping 500 tons of high explosives and 30,000 incendiaries. Within hours, the historic medieval center was reduced to a burning furnace. Among the ashes lay the hollowed-out skeleton of the 14th century St. Michael's Cathedral. The ruin was so absolute that German propagandists coined a new verb, Coventrieren, to Coventrate as Luftwaffe slang for total urban annihilation. 10-year-old resident David Whittle survived the raid, later remembering the attack as the sound of 1,000 hammers, with thick smoke pouring from every doorway as his city collapsed into rubble. As bombs leveled entire neighborhoods, the chaos exposed a stark divide in how Londoners survived. While government posters celebrated a unified national spirit, the darkness of the blackout masked a sharp rise in crime. In the first 8 weeks of the Blitz, police recorded 390 cases of looting from ruined homes. By November 9, 1940, the Old Bailey was already prosecuting thieves who stripped valuables from the wreckage left by air raids. Survival was also shaped by wealth. In the West End, affluent hotels and private clubs built reinforced basement shelters for their guests. In the impoverished East End, families had no such protection, crowding into damp, unsanitary public shelters or sleeping on cold stone platforms. The myth of equal sacrifice fractured against these realities. On the night of May 10, 1941, the skies above London filled with bombers for what would be the last major raid of the campaign. Over several hours, the assault dropped hundreds of high explosives and thousands of incendiaries across the capital. By morning, more than 1,400 civilians lay dead beneath the rubble. This destructive blow pushed the population to its absolute limit, leaving vast areas of the city in flames. Then the sirens stopped. The German military command shifted its focus eastward, moving its air fleets to prepare for the invasion of the Soviet Union. After 8 months of near-continuous bombardment, the campaign ended with an abrupt, heavy silence, leaving behind a scarred city and an exhausted population. The mythology of the Blitz often simplifies survival into easy heroism. The true legacy is far heavier, the exhausting, quiet cost of enduring the unthinkable. It reminds us of what ordinary people can bear, and the scars they carry long after the dust settles. Thank you for watching.